yeah, you already know what time it is. Your boy done dropped yet another banger, as I'm covering Fire Force Season 3 episodes 7, 8, and 9. Yeah, I'm really locked in. And if y'all rock with Fire Force as much as I do and y'all want to see me cover Season 1 and 2, drop a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments, gang, and I got you. Now grab your golden Oreos and pink lemonade. Them shits fire. Now on with the heat. So after Squad 8's been saved by Benimaru and the injured is carried away for examination, Captain Obi thanks Benimaru for pulling up to save them. Which Benimaru's like, don't even trip, gang, we exchanged cups of sake with the 8, so we locked in. And Benimaru tells Obi to let him know what happened at the Empire. So Obi's now in a room with Benimaru and Kunro explaining what happened at the Empire, as he states that the Holy Soul Temple and the Evangelist people joined forces, which as a result caused the 8 to be isolated from the Empire, which proved Benimaru's hunch right. So Benimaru asks Obi if what he told him earlier was true. Bro's like, yeah, Captain Burns has been martyred, as he was done in by a demon, which the death of Burns will be pinned on the 8th. Therefore, the union between the Empire and the White Clad will grow. So Benimaru wants to know what Burns was after when he went out for the fight, which he wonders if it was to isolate the 8, but he's like, nah, that's not the man he was. Meanwhile, at the Grand Cathedral, Hyo-Yan and Karim was praying over an empty casket, and Karim is heated over the fact that Squad 8 is being framed as this claim that Burns has been martyred while pursuing Obi, and the cause of his death stated to be a homicide committed by Shinra, making Squad 8 enemies of the Empire, which Karim can't stand the allegations being placed on the gang. So Hyo-Yan asks Karim if he remembers the last words of their captain, which Bro's like, hell yeah, as he takes a trip down memory lane, where their Captain Burns lets them know that they'll be the ones to change the world, and tells them to take care of the first in his absence. And panning over the Company 5 Combine, the baddie Princess Hibana gets suited up. So it constantly pans between Hyo-Yan, Karim, and Hibana, as Karim lets Hyo-Yan know that there's a place he needs to go. Meanwhile, Hibana states that she's going to return where she was raised, the St. Raphael's Convent. So Hibana's now at the St. Raphael's Convent in search for the secrets behind doppelgangers. And she had Kishida, who accompanied her, to remain outside and wait. As she walks in, she thinks about the tragic moment she had, which only her and Iris survived. And she swears to St. John's word that she'll have her revenge. So she continues to explore the place, now using a device on her wrist that detects change in frequency, which she is using to locate a large cavity underground. And as she continues to explore, she gets a drop in frequency and finds the entrance to the cavity, which is beneath the altar. But she had trouble moving it. Then suddenly Hyo-Yan and Karim pulls up, as they have the same goal to get information about doppelgangers. So they work together to move the altar, as Hibana uses rosewood while Karim uses thermoacoustic cooling. And just like that, they move the altar, which they spot a staircase descending into the ground. So they go down to explore, which Hibana comes across the secret of human combustion. So she searches a book for evidence, which happens to be a book on plants. Meanwhile, Hyo-Yan has a book on growing crops, which he asks Hibana if she have any ideas why. So Hibana started reading the situation, putting 2 and 2 together, and came to a shocking conclusion. But suddenly Sumire appears right behind the gang, confronting them, which Hibana's like, oh nah, why are you here? Which Sumire is like, I should be asking you the same thing, as she spots the book on the ground that Hibana was reading. And with Hibana seeing that Sumire knew exactly where the book was supposed to be, as she places on the shelf, she's now aware that Sumire knew about this place, and came to the conclusion that she was the one involved with the doppelganger situation. Hibana had enough and started crashing out, demanding Sumire to tell her what she's been doing down here. And Sumire's calm demeanor in this situation is enough to piss any nigga off. And so Hibana calls her out on using the sisters in experiments on doppelgangers, foiling children so that she could create pyrokinetics, as she added Adola insects to the vegetables she made them consume. And Hibana reveals the secret behind human combustion, where the mass combustion of the sisters was one of Sumire's experiments on doppelgangers, as she was trying to summon them from within Adola to their world, which she used the insects to do so, as they must be a bridge between Adola and their world. And when other cells from Adola interact and assimilate with their cells in the real world, that is when human combustion occurs. But suddenly an earthquake occurred, and Hibana's like, what's the pillars for? Which Sumire is like, thanks to the experiment, the pillars have assembled. So with hearing that, Hibana asked Sumire if she was performing the experiments to create Adola burst as well, and asked how many lives of the orphans did she toy with in her experiments. But Sumire was done answering questions and was ready to get active. But Hibana's still asking questions. Meanwhile, another earthquake occurred when suddenly Sumire appeared in front of Hyo-Yan, knocking him back. Then she decayed Karim's weapon with a single touch, like she's Shigaraki. Then touched Bro on the chest, had him bleeding immediately, but he countered her attack by stealing her heat in an instant. Then Sumire started speaking on Rekka, which Bro asked if she raised Rekka too. And speaking of questions, Hibana still has questions and asks Sumire what is she trying to do, which Sumire answered, stating that how 250 years ago, before human combustion occurred, the Great Cataclysm was a failure. So with without enough pillars or energy, the world was rent apart and embers remained. So ever since the last great cataclysm failed, Sumire's been creating new pillars for the next great cataclysm. So Hibana had more questions, but Sumire had enough of that, and with another earthquake occurring, Hyoyeon came to the conclusion that it had something to do with Sumire's power. Meanwhile, Hibana was now ready to get in the mix, as her other reason for being there was to get revenge on those who took the lives of her friends. But Sumire reveals something shocking, as she's like, do you really think they all died? Which she starts to arise demon children who calls out for Hibana in pain, who are all Hibana's childhood friends. So Hyoyeon tried to be Sneak Nation certified, but to no avail, cause he would have ended up hurting himself if he were to touch her, as she's vibrating her body to turn it into a weapon, which Karim is curious on how she does so. So Sumire lets them know that she's cold, and so she's simply amplifying her shivering, which Karim now understands that the earthquakes are a part of her power. But Hibana's like, even with the pyrokinetic ability, shaking the earth itself is impossible unless she uses an Adola burst. Then suddenly a hole opens up from the outside caused by Kishidi, who pulled up to make sure Hibana was safe. Bro, a W-mans on some W-mans shit. Hibana's like, well done, and told him to help them. Meanwhile, Sumire ends up standing still. So the gang used this opportunity to make their escape, as the mysterious woman in black intervenes using the last of her power to contact Sumire by pulling Sumire into an Adola link, preventing her from attacking. And as soon as the Adola link was over, the gang had already made their escape. Meanwhile, Ogun was spying on the situation as Sumire fades into the darkness. Meanwhile, Hibana thinks on the situation and states that the cause of human combustion was due to doppelgangers from the other world Adola interacting with people from their world. Therefore, the Great Cataclysm is a combustion reaction, which occurs when Adola itself interacts with the entirety of their world, which Karim chimed in and was like to turn the earth into the sun, which caught Hibana by surprise as he let her know that that's what the white clad member Hameya said at the Imperial seat. And with Hibana knowing that if all the pillars manage to gather at the Evangelist, the Great Cataclysm will occur again, enveloping the world in flames and destroying it. So Hibana's like, we need to prevent another cataclysm. And panning on the other side of things, Arthur's bummed out that his Excalibur is broken, which he believes was made up of orichalcum. But Vulcan's like, nah gang, that isn't real orichalcum, and lets Arthur know that he'll help him find the real orichalcum, as he will forge Arthur the holy sword. Vulcan tells Lisa and Yu about his plan, as they will be helping him in this operation, which is to make Arthur believe the material being used to forge him the true Excalibur is orichalcum in order to get Arthur back on his feet, because Vulcan needs Arthur to power up so they can stand a chance against the enemy. And with that, Operation Full Arthur has begun, as Vulcan already had the whole thing planned out, even had the townspeople in on it. Meanwhile, Benimaru and Joker posted up high looking tough as hell. Talk about an elite duo. And you know you tough when you come with your own theme song. But yeah, as Arthur's journey continues, they make it to their destination, and Arthur digs a hole in the ground, which he finds a letter that states that the orichalcum is back at the pickle shop they first visited. Now if that was me, I low-key would have been heated, cause what you mean I walked all this way just to walk all the way back? Like a nigga done went on the whole journey already. I felt like I was searching for the One Piece. All that to tell me I was where I needed to be during the first step at my adventure? This is absurd. But that nigga Arthur is different. You see, the gang was hyped thinking they had Arthur fooled, but all they did was set fuel to the fire, as Arthur reads the letter stating that it says it is dark beneath the lamppost. So he came to the conclusion that it was in the nether, which had the gang shocked, and it was no talking Arthur out of it, as the next step in their journey was to the nether. So they get going. Meanwhile, this kid asks Arthur to save her cat, but bro's like, nah, I'ma do my own thing. I'll save the side quest for later. So they arrive at the nether, and lil bro Yu is tweaking cause this is his first time in the nether. So Arthur encourages bro, making him lock in. Meanwhile, Vulcan talks to Lisa asking if she's okay, and asks if the nether reminds her of the past. Well shit, it sure as hell do now since you mentioned it. But yeah, Lisa's like, she's locked in, though she still fears Dr. Giovanni, but when the time comes, she'll overcome him. But Vulcan's like, when that time comes, he'll be there to smash him with her. Like, damn bro, pause. And Vulcan tells Lisa that they don't have much time until the Great Cataclysm, so they need to power up Arthur now. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, Shinra talks to Conora about manually tapping into Adola Link cause he wanna charge an Adola himself. Meanwhile, Lisa's tired of playing pretend cause they've been at it for an hour and tried to end things by making Arthur believe that he's fighting the final boss, but to no avail. And Arthur starts to get bored. But then he suddenly locked in as he sensed the presence, and to everyone's surprise, it was Arthur's parents, who've been feeding into Arthur's delusions, as they've been playing pretend resistance in the nether for years, as they couldn't let Arthur go into the nether alone since he was a child they couldn't put in harm's way. Which Lisa's like, you abandoned him? But Arthur don't even understand that. So Arthur's father's like, all we did was keep the world from disaster, which piqued Vulcan's interest. Then Arthur's mother immediately started mentioning the holy temple which worshipped the great soul was created to manipulate the people, and mentions that a higher dimension dimensional entity called the Evangelists want to recreate the Great Cataclysm and destroy the world. Lisa wants to know how she know any of that. But then Arthur's mother starts speaking on how human combustion occurs. So Vulcan's like, how you know all that? Which she's like, it's from her husband's delusions. So Arthur's dad lets Vulcan know how it all started with him escaping reality after shit hit the fan with the family restaurant, and speaks on them abandoning Arthur, and that every time he looks into his hat he see a sky full of stars, which he then see the truth of the planet. So he asks Arthur if he came to the Nether in search for something, which Arthur lets him know Ori Chalcom to forge the true Excalibur. So he immediately started to show Arthur the way, as Vulcan wasted no time following behind them. So Lisa's like, oh nah, you're too quick to trust people. So Vulcan's like, but we're still together now, had her on hush mode. And throughout the piles of technology left over before the Great Cataclysm, Arthur's dad shows them a fairing from a space rocket, which is much better than the material Arthur was searching for, which Arthur believes is dark matter from space. Then suddenly 3 kids popped out the cut that happens to be the sons and daughters of Arthur's parents, and of course Arthur's siblings, to say the least. But you got heated and started crashing out on Arthur's parents for having kids after abandoning Arthur. But Arthur isn't even listening, and Vulcan's excited as hell about the material he received, and so he spilled the beans to Arthur on how they set him up to find the fake Ori Chalcom, which Arthur's like, say less, had you crashing out even further. So the game makes it back to the crib as Vulcan starts forging the true Excalibur, and once that was said and done, Arthur takes his true Excalibur and swore upon the sword that he'll never lose to anything again. So Arthur's in the room looking at a letter left behind by his father as Maki enters the room as she reads the letter that states, the surface was fun, we're going back on another adventure. Maki's like, damn, again? But as she looks at Arthur, bro has a smile on his face, completely oblivious to the fact that he's been abandoned by his parents twice now. Meanwhile, Shinra is trying to manually tap into a Dola link, which Benimaru gives him some advice on how to do so. And with that, Shinra successfully taps into a Dola, seeing his little brother Sho, who's like, who are you? As Shinra's smiling for they finally meet again, which Sho soon realizes is his brother. And yeah, those fireforce season 3 episodes 7, 8, and 9 in all its greatness. And you already know these few episodes are absolutely pure heat, a solid 10 out of 10 for me, cause fireforce never miss. Now, with that being said, if you made it this far, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. We moving. Also, I'm taking recommendations, bro, so hit the comments. And more hit on the way.